will be our future leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, instead of education, we're learning things that really don't matter in real life, as well as our education system. We're like, I'm not sure what the percentage is at now, but we're definitely behind a lot of countries.
We really are.
I think we're 25th in math. And
Yeah, I think it's like 25th
14th
or
in
26th.
science.
Right. I mean, I think, and I mean, also the public school system is kind of set up with a No Child Left Behind thing, which is terrible.
It was terrible. They killed it, I think.
Oh, I hope they did.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, me
Obama
too.
killed it.
That would have been a really good move on his part because I mean, it's awful. That's just teaching to the bottom of the class. I mean, just trying to pull up the people who don't really have. I mean, who might need more specialized and individualized education, both in the lower part of the spectrum, and the higher part of the spectrum, and then everyone ends up losing because the teacher doesn't really. I mean, she can't focus. He or she cannot focus on the students and has to focus on the average for the testing.
Yeah, and plus, the testing was flawed too, and, some teachers would, just say, okay, these students are a little bit remedial. They can go and finger paint, while these students that we know are going to ace the test or do well on the test can take the test just so we can receive funding. And then schools, and if your kids aren't, if your kids aren't doing well in your school, then wouldn't you need more funding rather than less funding? So that whole system was set up in the wrong way.
Yeah, and okay, apparently even in the standardized tests, the teachers were actually cheating in the Chicago public school system because
I've heard of that.
Right, and this was I'll have to cite my source. This is the book Freakonomics, and so apparently what some of the teachers were doing was changing the answers of the last couple of questions in the standardized tests so that everyone would have correct answers and therefore improving the average of the schools so they can, still have their good status and everything. And apparently they discovered it because all of the answers in the most difficult part of the test were exactly the same and they were all correct.
Yeah, I've heard of that where the teachers would cheat, and in specific school systems, they've been killing a lot of the schools, and the superintendent's leaving. The whole school system education is just completely going downhill.
Yeah, and I think that, with not even minor improvements, but with major overhauls to schools, like with more funding, schools could do more for their students. Except even right now, people are closing down schools and forcing hundreds of kids to be put in the same class, and that's not going to help them because then the child that's floundering will not get the attention that he or she needs, while the child that's doing exceptionally well will not get the stimulation that he or she needs.
Right. And I mean, it's not just about funding, it's completely altering the mindset, although funding is really important too, because even if you have great ideas, you can't really realize them without the money for them.
Exactly. All right, I think this brings us on to our next topic, the fast food society, fat, dumb, and happy. As you know, this describes America and how the average American tends to think. We don't want to learn, as a people, we don't want to learn what is going on. We tend not to care, even if we do find out. And a lot of people still cling to prejudices and that don't even matter in common days. Like I saw this comment on a forum where someone said, why should we help Japan during the earthquake because they attacked... Huh?
Because of Pearl Harbor?
Yeah, because of Pearl Harbor. And I'm like, well, clearly this is not, it's not relevant. Just because of something that happened in the past, you really need to let it go. And everyone needs to help each other. We're all from the same race. Just because we're not from the same country doesn't matter.
And that will be that as it may. It's also America as a whole. America as a whole just... Not everybody in America is fat. Not even the majority is fat, but it's close to a majority.
It's
close.
I believe it's either the first or second country with the most overweight people.
Yeah, we are the first or second.
Yeah,
I think we're the fattest country in the world.
Yeah, I think we are, but we're not over. I mean, it's not like over 60% of us are overweight. So, I think that there's always room for improvement. But America, while it does have ways to go, it's not. Basically what I'm trying to say, I'm trying to phrase this in a way that'll wrap it up in a nice, neat bow, but it really can't be done. America has some ways to go, except the only way we can do that is to find an alternative, People, especially during times where people can't necessarily go out and buy all the fruits and vegetables or have enough time to, cook and do all that stuff. it's time for we really need to make because it mainly happens with economics.
David,
I actually have a correction. According to Forbes.com, the United States ranks number 9th.
Great.
But we're still
at 74.1% of the population being obese.
Whereas the 8th country has 74.2%, and the top country being having 94.5%.
That's kind of sad, but
it's not really a major country. I mean, I haven't actually heard of it.
Me neither.
But yeah, and I guess also a problem. I think you were touching on it, but as highlighted in the documentary Food Inc.
Mm-hmm.
Healthy food is really expensive for a lot of people, and I mean, in most cultures, it's the opposite. The more fattening food, if you will, is more expensive.
yeah, and
So
Whereas there was
healthier.
there was a quote that said, "I don't go to McDonald's because the food is good. Go because it's fast and cheap."
Right.
That's basically the American mindset.
and also in these developing countries that have less obesity percentages. That's because they're working out in the fields. They're actually being active. The children are out playing and stuff like that. Whereas America, because of the luxuries that have been introduced, less Americans are going outside. More people are staying home and playing on their computer, and in turn, that contributes to the obesity.
Now, I mean, I'll use the term developing countries pretty loosely because some developing countries are better off than others. But in many of those countries that you mentioned specifically, a lot of people actually are on the opposite end of the spectrum, so they're starving. So, I mean, they're not exactly very well off either, because the point here is with really fattening food being so accessible, we get really fat.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And on to our second and third parts, dumb and happy.
Dumb, meaning basically, as I stated before, the ignorance of most people towards current events and how we don't want to know. We prefer the way things are now. We want our lives right in front of our face. Politicians, that's why most major news networks don't talk about Ron Paul. They would said that in Iowa, Michelle Bachmann ranked first, and they said not to count out a guy who had less votes than the person who had so few votes that he dropped out of the race. Why are they ignoring him? Because they don't want the truth. They don't want things fixed.
Yeah, and even just beyond the politicians and stuff, like on the news networks, like there was a big protest in Washington, D.C. about the way that the government was going, and like 250 people were arrested. But you couldn't find that on MSNBC or even Fox News. You couldn't find that on ABC, CBS, or whatever. They weren't reporting on it. Instead, they were talking about the earthquake, even when there was nothing else to say about the earthquake.
The lack of information that we have is amazing, considering free media.
Yeah, right. And considering how we call it the information age, I mean, I guess it's really been helped with bloggers and, people on Twitter and everything helping spread the information. But the media outlets themselves, if you watch, I mean, even say CNN for a whole evening, they'll just talk about the same subject and go around and try to get as much of it out as they can. And if they run out of material, then they'll just repeat stuff.
Yeah, and they'll make news out of things that don't need to be news, like. Steve Jobs steps down. I know that could be news, but that doesn't have to be an entire news special.
Right.
There's so many other things that you can talk about that actually are relevant to the world.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, even to investors, okay, Steve Jobs steps down, Tim Cook is perfectly capable. No big deal there.
Yeah, and also, it might even be, you could even say that it's localized to the United States, because if you go on to BBC News, you'll see them reporting about more than just what's going on. You'll see them reporting on a variety of topics. Not just might be the level of journalism, but, if you look at these other places that are reporting news, like even if there's something big going on in Asia or in the Middle East, you'll always see the Asian and Middle Eastern stations having the best footage and the best reporting.
Exactly, which is why you should listen to our podcast.
Yes.
Exactly.
We will report on the news that is relevant to you. Okay, so now
shameless self promotion there, even though you're already listening to us.
So we need to get on to our next topic, which was brushed on lightly. We call this "Why Chinese Moms Are Superior," which is clearly a reference to the book that came out, "The Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother." The "Why Chinese Mothers Are Superior" is an excerpt. And so, what do you have to say on this?
This was published in the Wall Street Journal. Well, It's a woman who, she's apparently married to an American man, or I don't know, Western says here, and she was extremely strict with her daughters, and they couldn't really have any social life outside of school. They couldn't do many extracurricular activities. They couldn't play computer games. They had to get straight A's and things like that. And you think maybe that's too extreme, but on the other hand, if you expect success, then you will more than likely get it.
Yeah.
Because that's the least acceptable thing. I mean, that's the only thing that you will accept.
Yeah, in America, this caused a huge upraise when they read that her daughters, Sophia and Louisa, were not allowed to attend a sleepover, have a play date, be in a school play, complain about not being in a school play, watch TV or play computer games, choose extracurricular activities, get any grade less than an A, be the #1 student in every subject except for gym and drama, play any instrument other than the piano or violin, or not play the piano or violin.
Right, and I mean, it is pretty extreme, and my standing, honestly, is neither extreme is good, neither being too loose nor too rigorous, but in this way, you will really only accept success. And
I know, but it also said in the article that other parents would be accepted like other parents from other countries, so,
correct.
It's not just that.
Right.
And it has something to do with, being from another country and wanting to excel in the United States. So.
And I think what we have to do is just apply the mindset of success to everyone, and that will improve our country.
Yes.
We're all out of time for today.
Thank you for listening. This has been Café with Controversy.
Brilliant.